so many different parties that were involved.
If you're going to resolve a fight, you have to understand everything that's happening to come up with a resolution.
What they've done is take advantage of the conflict in the past and start managing the resource basically from the headwaters to the ocean, which is the way that we have to manage it in the future. What they've also done is brought I'll call it a portfolio approach to water management.
The future of California depends on cooperation up and down watersheds. What results from that are better policies in the watershed to improve water quality, to enhance groundwater recharge, and ultimately to improve flood protection. Those are all goals that can work together if we're smart about it.
Thinking about our communities based on our shared hydrologic circumstances is smart thinking for me, because it creates the opportunity to explore options and solutions for solving some of the tough problems.
All right, our next session, session 4, I'd like to thank the D.WRE Engineering Company for sponsoring this session. Stretching nearly 100 miles and providing water to 5 million people and habitat to hundreds of species within the watershed, the Santa Ana River is vitally important to its surrounding counties, including Orange County. The panel, The Santa Ana River, What's Coming Downstream, will cover the roles of the upstream agencies, allocations, reliable challenges, and future impacts to downstream agencies. Please welcome to the stage our session moderator, Jeff Mosher, General Manager for the Santa Ana Watershed Project Authority. Jeff?
Thank you, Fritz, and it's great to be here, and that was a good video to get us started off. And I also want to thank Fritz for those comments about the watershed, because that's a big part of my job. So as Fritz mentioned, I'm Jeff Mosher with the Santa Ana Watershed Project Authority. So joining me today are leaders of 5 agencies who are deeply affected and involved in the Santa Ana River watershed. So please help me join me in welcoming Craig Miller with Western Municipal Water District, Bob Tincher from San Bernardino Municipal Valley District, Todd Corbin from Riverside Public Utilities, Shivaji Deshmukh with Inland Empire Utility Agencies, and Mike Markus with Orange County Water District at the end of the watershed.
The end of the bottom of the watershed.
So I want to reiterate some of the statistics about the Santa Ana River and the watershed that Fritz mentioned. So first of all, we're 6 million, over 6 million. We were debating that behind the curtain, how many people are in the watershed, but it's at least 6 million, could be more. So the river is the largest coastal river in Southern California. As Fritz mentioned, it runs over 90 miles from the San Bernardino Mountains to the Pacific Ocean, has over 50 tributaries, and includes parts of San Bernardino, Riverside, Orange, as well as LA counties. So what I'd like for everyone to take away from this is that the river, as well as the watershed, is an asset. It's an asset for both the upper and lower watershed. It plays an important role in our water resources, including water supply and flood control, but also for our communities in terms of habitat, recreation, and open space. So water agencies up and down the river have been collaborating on how best to manage and use the river, including addressing regional issues, regulatory topics, and water quality requirements. And planning and implementing on a regional basis or a watershed basis can help address those issues of common interest and provide multiple benefits. And that's a theme of how we think about and plan in the watershed. So my organization, SAPA, plays a role in this collaboration. We're a joint powers authority. We have 5-member agencies: Orange County Water District, Inland Empire Utility Agency, Eastern Municipal Water District, Western Water District, and Valley District. And we work with them on regional planning as well as projects. So one of the things that SAPA does is we manage the Inland Empire brine line, and our partner on that is OC Sanitation. And that's a critical element of how we manage water quality within the upper watershed to remove salts, other non-reclaimable flows, goes through treatment at OC San and out there discharge. And that's a That's a significant element of being able to manage the water resources in the upper watershed. We also provide a forum for our member agencies and others in the watershed, stakeholders, to talk about issues, including regulatory issues with the regional board. So it's a great use of SAPA to be able to have that dialogue on those topics on a watershed basis. So during this session, we're going to hear from 5 agencies throughout the watershed on their efforts to protect and enhance the Santa Ana River for the benefits of communities and the watershed. So we're going to ask each member of the panel one question. We only have 40 minutes. I noticed other sessions got longer time, and we have more people. So I was doing the math. It doesn't work on our favor, so we think we can get one question in per. I'm not sure we're going to have questions at the end, but we'll see how it goes. So for the first question is to Craig Miller, and we want to talk about the Santa Ana River historically. So there was the 1969 settlement on the river, and now we've enjoyed 50 years of collaboration in the watershed. The settlement ended a long period of lawsuits and ushered in an area of stability and cooperation. So can you tell us what issues were resolved and how the settlement allowed water agencies to efficiently plan for our long-term water needs? Craig?
Sure, Jeff, thanks. That's a great question. I love to lead off with the legal side, so this should be interesting to the 4 attorneys that are here. Everyone else sit tight, the more interesting panelists are coming, but I get tasked with the rules. So we're a bunch of water engineers, so we love rules, we need rules. So what does the 69 judgment say? So back in the early 60s, I'm sure Orange County was having an event similar to this, maybe without the nice monitors, and they said, wait, the water is not coming down from the upper watershed, what are we going to do? So 2,000 parties in Orange County got together and sued the upper watershed. Well, the upper watershed didn't appreciate that, so they had their own meeting, and they said, we don't like that, so 2,000 of the upper watershed parties sued the downstream parties. So we got 4,000 parties in the litigation. So the judge divided up all those parties. Orange County Water District represented all the Orange County parties. The upper watershed was represented by Valley District, Western, and Chino Basin Municipal Water District, which is now IEUA. So that's how we started the fight in the early 60s. So it took until 1969, and there was finally a judgment. So what did the judgment say? And so this is important because it has everything to do with how we manage the river. So the judgment set flow requirements. So it said 42,000 acre feet has to pass through Prado. 42,000 acre feet of base flow has to pass through Prado every year. Upper watershed, if there's not 42,000, you got to make water at Prado. So you got to buy water or do something to create 42,000. Orange County also gets all the storm flow on top of that. So you have to differentiate between storm flow and what we call as Water Master's base flow. So Orange County gets all the storm water that gets to Prado. The upper watershed said, well, that might not be fair because what if we send more? We got to account for that. So upper watershed gets credits for anything in excess of 42,000. So the flow in the river started at 42,000 back in 69, and it's been going up. So it went up to about 170,000 acre feet of water at one point, and now it's back down to about 70,000. So you think about the credits, you know, if they're required to do 42, they do upper watershed does 142, they have 100,000 acre feet of credits. So that's a good thing. So the upper watershed says, well, let's just shut off Prado. We got all these credits. Well, you can't do that because Orange County's attorneys caught on to that and said, well, we're not going to stand for that. We got to have water. So you can only use 8,000 credits a year. So right now the upper watershed has something like 4 million credits, but we can only use them at 8,000 a year. So we have about 400 years of credits. So 42,000 will get to Prado. If we start implementing credits, it can be 34,000. So that's the details of the quantities of water. But with that came restrictions. So the upper watershed said, okay, well, we agree we'll send the water down, but we don't want Orange County telling us what to do above the dam. So the judgment contemplated that and included that in the judgment, that Orange County cannot restrict what happens upstream. So the upper watershed, it's spelled out in the judgment, can capture, reuse, recharge all the water in the upper watershed without Orange County telling them what to do. And in fact, Orange County cannot go up and cause water to come down, which could be interpreted, you can't go buy water in the upper watershed and supplement the 42,000. It also says Orange County cannot interfere with upstream activities, which is really important because as you fight on the river, we don't fight anymore, we're watermen. We get along great, right? And part of the importance of what the judgment did is it created peace on the river. And we just celebrated 50 years of peace on the river because there really has been peace. But it gave all of us water nerds the framework for how we can argue and discuss how much water comes down and what projects can be implemented. The judgment also contemplated water quality issues. In their mind, back in the day, it was salt. And salt was important, and they knew how important salt was. So they created SAPA. SAPA came out of the judgment, where you needed a forum to discuss salt issues. But a lot of things happened since then that I don't think those very smart people that set up this judgment were thinking about. Enormous population growth in the watershed, significant drought, changes in how water is brought to Southern California, endangered species. You're going to hear from Bob a lot about, well, what do you do with the Santa Ana sucker, endangered fish that's surviving in that flow? What do you do with the least Bell's vireo? What do you do with habitat? So the judgment didn't contemplate that. But what the judgment did do is it left that open so that we had flexibility to accommodate those kinds of challenges. What do we do with PFAS? No one thought about PFAS, obviously, in the 60s, but it left an environment where we can work on that. What do you do about water storage? You heard Dave Van Dorp up here talking about conservation programs. They didn't contemplate conservation programs. Orange County has a conservation program at Prado. Western and Valley have a conservation program and trying to grow that up at Seven Oaks Dam. So the judgment didn't talk about that, but it gave us the guidelines on flow. So with that, I think that kind of sets the stage for now. How do the different entities kind of deal within the environment of that judgment?
Right. Thank you, Craig. And this, you bring up the word peace, and that's still in SAPA's mission statement, that we will help maintain the peace in the watershed. So I find it fascinating that theme carries forward. So Bob, the next question's for you. Valley District is located at the top of the watershed and is working towards recycling more of its water and capturing more stormwater. How do these projects at the top of the watershed impact the bottom of the watershed in Orange County?
All right, well, that really is the big question, isn't it? So I think most people would wonder if we do more recycling upstream or we capture more stormwater upstream, what is the impact in Orange County? And the agencies that are sitting on this table put together a state-of-the-art computer model that starts in the upper watershed and goes all the way down to Prado, and analyzed all the projects upstream. And we looked at our projects, both the recycling and the stormwater capture, and the answer is it did not impact Orange County. And let me explain why. First of all, most of our recycled water will continue to flow downstream to meet our judgment requirements that Craig just mentioned, and the habitat requirements that he also touched on as well. And then when we talk about stormwater capture, a lot of the stormwater in the watershed still flows to the ocean when we have it. It's a caveat, right? It's got to rain. So when we talk about our stormwater capture program, what the modeling really shows is that we're helping scalp some of that stormwater that's still flowing to the ocean. As a matter of fact, when we add our stormwater capture program to Orange County's, there's still going to be water that's going to flow out to the ocean, stormwater that'll flow to the ocean. And finally, you have to take into consideration our investment in imported water. Our area spent $1 billion to connect to the State Water Project. We're a state water contractor, just like Metropolitan, and we have access to over 100,000 acre-feet of imported water per year. Next year, if it rains in Northern California, we hope to import our millionth acre-foot of imported water into the upper watershed. So when you take all of these factors into consideration, the plans that we have in the upper watershed are not going to have a negative impact on the lower watershed. And really, when you think about the relationship between the upper and the lower watershed, a healthy upper watershed is good for the lower watershed. The more healthy the upper watershed is, the more water flows down through the watershed. To the extent that we can capture more storm water and even recycle water, and imported water comes through the upper watershed, there's an opportunity for an additional use. So it gets used up in the upper watershed, but then can also get used as we move down the watershed as well. And probably the most tangible benefit to the watershed is we are projecting a surplus of state project water because of our investments in local supplies, and we are making our excess state project water available to the entire watershed through the SARCUP groundwater bank. It's a water banking program that Mike Markus is going to talk about in just a moment. So just in finishing, if we are to think about the watershed like a chain, you know, a chain has independent links that fit together to give it strength. If we look at the watershed and all the different agencies involved, we're all tied together by the river, and a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. And I think we want all of the links in the watershed to be strong. I'm confident that they are, but our agency is working really hard at the top of the watershed to make our link as strong as we can, not only for the benefit of our area, but for the benefit of the entire watershed.
Thank you, Bob. That was great. The next question is for Todd. So Todd, the river is a priority for the city of Riverside, and the city's engaged in a number of activities and projects focused on maintaining and improving conditions of the river. Can you walk us through some of those efforts that you're involved in up in Riverside?
Sure, happy to, Jeff. You're right about one thing. 40 minutes is not enough for 6 general managers to talk about their agencies, because there's a lot going on. You know, as you saw from the map before, the river runs through it. It runs through the entire watershed. And Riverside, in its name, is adjacent and along the Santa Ana River. We're blessed to have our mayor, Patricia Locke Dawson, who spent most of her professional career as an advocate for the Santa Ana River as our mayor. And her motto in her campaign was "Put the river back in Riverside." So the protection of the river, the value of the river is first and foremost in our strategic goals for the city of Riverside. We talk a lot about, and as we go down the panel here, a lot about projects. Eventually, those projects impact people. And I think I spent most of my career working in water in special districts. Having now worked for the city, there's a transition in our thinking about projects and how projects affect people and communities and add value to communities. And so from our perspective, protecting the river and enhancing the river is absolutely critical just to the community of Riverside itself, which is significant, the largest city in the Inland Empire, maybe the 12th largest city in California. So there's lots of challenges but opportunities related to the river. Through public utilities and our public works department, our wastewater treatment plant is one of those entities, one of those facilities that impacts the river through its river discharge. I'll give so much credit to the San Bernardino Valley Municipal Water District for really spearheading over many, many years the Habitat Conservation Plan project. That project itself is to not only provide some environmental benefits, but also give agencies the ability in the upper watershed to do projects, whether it's resource projects, new water resource projects, or recycling projects. And in that, the city of Riverside is kind of front and center, because instead of just discharging water to the river like we have for many, many decades, the proposal is to take that recycled water, move it upriver a number of miles to existing tributaries that are no longer in use, to put back the population of the Santa Ana sucker fish, to give the habitat and that endangered species a home to grow, and to also protect the river so that we can do other things for it. So it's a significant environmental element to the city. It provides that connection to nature in a rather urban inland setting. We recognize the value of the water itself and how we need to protect it. But I think the correlation between doing those projects and how it impacts the community is kind of what we're thinking about. And that correlates also to the city's Envision 2025 strategic plan, which not only is this a 2025 plan, but really a 25-year plan to move the community towards a decarbonized citywide community, but also protecting 30% of our natural lands for open space, which water has to help support, and also using the water resources and water planning efforts that we have in order to meet the growing demands of our population. So it's robust, it's aspirational, but it's an ecosystem. It is, from a community standpoint, all of those things that have to come together in order to actually define success. And so it's not just at the project level, it's how do all those things connect together. And let's not forget the social side of the river itself. The river has a significant impact to the social justice, the social climate to our region. There's lots of issues and challenges related to that, but we have to find the value, and I think that the panel here and all the agencies working together are really helping lead and push those efforts. But we can't forget about those other community groups and interests that also participate in the river. And so our mayor started a task force. Jeff, thank you, and so many on this panel for being part of it, and your staff's being part of it to help put the river back in Riverside. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Todd. Shivaji, so IUA is in the middle of the watershed. I've seen you work closely with the agencies in the upper watershed, the agencies around you, as well as with Orange County Water District. Can you tell us about some of the challenges and successes that IUA has had over the years?
Sure, thanks, Jeff. I guess I first want to address the question in the title of our panel and what's coming down the river. And because of a lot of the successes and programs that we've had within our service area, it's a lot less salt coming down. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to just highlight a few of the examples, and ultimately it's not a solution that's unique to IUA. It's really about partnerships. Partnerships at the local level, the regional level, state and federal level. We are in a unique position in IUA. We are originally a municipal water district formed under the Act from 1911. We are the only metropolitan member agency in San Bernardino County. We're the only Met member agency who only has access to untreated state project supplies. So while that may come with some challenges when it comes to a 5 or 0% allocation year, it also comes with water quality benefits because we only get the lower salt levels in our source supply. So that's an opportunity that's great for us from a water quality standpoint, but it's also a challenge for us because going forward we have to really be concerned about our unique and limited access to supplies. Partnerships, like I said, are not unique to us. Some of the examples are, there's a lot of new terminology I have to get used to, working closely with our partner, Chino Basin Water Master, whether it's the Optimum Basin Management Program, Maximum Benefit, or ultimately hydraulic control. But all of these are great examples of partnership. Two I want to highlight are our groundwater recharge program. Even though we're a water district, we took on the responsibility of wastewater in 1973. So working with 7 contract agencies through a regional contract, we're responsible for collection and treatment, and ultimately all the recycled water in our service area. So how do we partner with the groundwater management agency, the Water Master? Well, we want to get as much of that water in the ground and for storage while meeting the obligations of the Santa Ana River judgment. We've worked very closely with not only Water Master, but San Bernardino County Flood Control. And we heard in the first panel about how there's a nexus between conservation, storage, and flood control. And so we've been able to utilize those flood control basins for groundwater recharge. That's at the top of our service area and basin. At the south part of our basin, something we call hydraulic control, working very closely with a lot of the parties in the basin and Water Master, as well as a joint powers authority called Chino Desalter Authority. We're able to remove a lot of that salt that comes through our groundwater basin. We're fortunate to have access to the Inland Empire brine line through SAPA. So between having this desalter as well as the access to the brine line, it really does not only set us up for a high-quality water supply, but it also protects the river and the watershed.
Thank you, Shivaji. So Mike, batting cleanup,
Yes.
right? So OCWD is at the end of the watershed and benefits from many of the projects and collaborations that occur with the upper watershed agencies. So a recent success, and I'm not sure how many people are aware of it, is our Santa Ana River Conservation and Conjunctive Use Program, or SARCUP. This is a program that all SAPA agencies were involved in. SAPA played a role in terms of funding coming from Prop 1 through D.WRE, which was very benefited. It's really a prototypical regional project with regional benefits. And it provides water supply resiliency and reliability. It increases yield in the groundwater basins. So can you give us a synopsis, describe what SARCUP is and some of the benefits that we see?
Well, you just did a nice job of explaining that, Jeff.
Okay,
so
well, thank you
I'd
very
rather
much.
not answer that question, so I'll create my own question for myself, if you don't mind. Little poetic license, if you will. And I wanted to talk a little bit, and I'll answer your question, but before I do that, I just wanted to talk a little bit about SOP and the collaboration. I mean, you've heard about the collaboration in the watershed. It wasn't always that way. I mean, Orange County was concerned primarily about the water that we were getting, and it was a tremendous shock to see base flows go from 150,000 to 70,000. But we've managed and we've worked very well. It's funny, when you said peace in the watershed, my mind immediately went to Phil Anthony. and Phil Anthony, for many of you in the room know, is a past director of the Orange County Water District who passed away a few years ago. But Phil was all about peace in the watershed. We can't be arguing amongst ourselves. And he ingrained that in me. And when I was appointed general manager 14 years ago, he said, Mike, I want you to go to every single SAPA meeting. I want you to show a presence out there, to show our commitment to what was being done in the upper watershed. And so I've done that. COVID has made it a little more difficult to do that nowadays. But it was Phil's leadership, because he was out there for decades at SAPA, a long time. We're very fortunate to have Director Bruce Whitaker as our representative out at SAPA now, following Phil's legacy. But as you can see, there's many contentious issues that could have arisen, and I think in the past have. And I really think over the last 10 years or so, things have gotten much better. We're talking to each other. We're developing projects together. We're not as much worried about the issues that we were worried about in the past. We're building more trust, and that's been the benefit that SAPA has brought to the table. And a good example is SARCUP, so I'll talk about SARCUP now and answer your question, I suppose. But this was a great project because, and I think it was Prop 84, wasn't it, that we were awarded $55 million to do this watershed-wide project. And the genesis of the project actually came from Doug Hedrick, who at the time was the general manager at Valley District. And we were at a Water Masters meeting, and Doug said, you know what, we've really got to do a watershed-wide project. And that's, you know, I think that would be really important. And we all listened, and Valley District, as Bob said, you know, ultimately said, listen, if we have excess state water project, we'll give that excess to Met, and then Met will give half of that water to the SARCUP program. And so it took an agreement between Met and Valley District, and then an agreement between Met and the SARCUP member agencies in order to do that. And so what we're able to do when we have excess water now, we can put it in 6 different groundwater basins in the upper and lower watershed. And then when there's a shortage, when Met has an allocation, we can pull that water out of the ground and serve it on top of whatever Met gives us that particular year. So this water has something that's called extraordinary supply tagged onto it, which means we can use it during times of drought, which is very important for all of the member agencies. So, I mean, that in a nutshell is SARCUP. $55 million. We were able to build different facilities throughout the watershed, recharge basins up in Eastern's area. Craig got some pipeline pump stations, Orange County got some wells, extraction wells, so we're able to pull the water out of the basin, and really is a great example of a watershed-wide project, and one in which 5 different agencies were able to come together and build this project. And I think it's a testimony to those agencies, and it's also a testimony to SAPA as well for putting that program together for us.
Thank you, Mike. That was a good story. It was very useful to hear. So for some reason, we have time left over. I am surprised.
I didn't explain all those initials after my name. That was
okay. Well, all right. We could do that. So following on that, it's a little bit self-serving for SAPA, but how do we, and this can be for all of you, how can we maintain moving into the future? How can we maintain that collaboration? Craig, do you want to start off?
I thought it was for all of us. How do we maintain it? I mean, the collaborative spirit, I mean, water resources is all about sharing now. You know, there aren't easy projects anymore. You don't just sink a well somewhere and you're all set. So it's all about collaboration. I don't know how you put the genie back in the bottle. You know, we're going to be collaborating, and SARCUP is an outstanding example, and maybe even just a little more emphasis on what Bob was talking about with habitat conservation program. You know, that's important for Valley, it's important for the species, but without that, it actually paralyzed our ability to build all sorts of projects. And I'll just give you a Western example. We operate the RCRA wastewater treatment plant, which discharges to the river. It has an opportunity to recycle water. We're going to collaborate with IEUA and Shivaji to hopefully get that water into the Chino Basin to build their groundwater levels and increase supply. Great deal, right? Well, environmentally, we were getting, there was a protest against our project to do that. Well, when the resource agencies look at that, they're like, yeah, we don't know what's going to happen upstream, because we heard Shivaji has projects and Todd has projects and all the agencies have projects. There's 20 different projects, recycling and other projects that are going on. Western, we don't want to approve your project because we don't know what the other guys are going to do. So they held us hostage until they figured out what all the other projects were. Well, think about that as an engineer. How do I know what everyone else is going to do to get my project approved? So actually, through this spirit of collaboration, we said, no. The whole watershed is going to get together, the upper watershed, and we're going to put all our projects in a bucket. And we're going to get permitting for all those projects. And that way we don't have to do this one-by-one battle. And you heard others up here, the assemblymen, talking about, let's rethink how we get approval to build water projects. So rather than stalling each one for 10 years while we battle this in the courts, do them all at once and get the permitting so that we can all move together. So in essence, we're tied at the hip forever on these projects. I don't know how you'd ever go backwards on that. And it's working out great.
Thanks. Anyone, Shivaji, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I just want to add on to Mike's comment about commitment to SAPA by the agencies. And I think for us to maintain that, we got to communicate the importance. And just as a personal anecdote, when I started in this position 2.5 years ago, I was fortunate to know a couple of my fellow panelists here, and I asked them about any advice. And the first thing both Craig and Mike said to me is, consistently be at SAPA. Your directors are there. I've noticed at every GM meeting, we have all 5 of us there. There's a strong commitment by our board. It's one of the 2 appointments our board actually votes on. And right now, another sign of commitment, our appointee, Director Jasmine Hall, serves as the chair of SAPA. So we put a lot of effort and commitment into that. And just that regular interaction, it's really hard not to be collaborative, because I'm forced to see Craig and Mike and Bob and Joe out in Eastern almost every 2 weeks, right? So we don't tend to sit on issues. We've been tackling a lot of tough issues that may be challenging to some and beneficial to others, but we tend to work through them just because of the frequency of our communication.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, I was just going to add on, I used the analogy of a chain earlier, but another analogy for the watershed is a family, and you don't get to pick your family, right? But what does it take in a family to keep a family together? You got to work at it, right? And I think that's what everybody is saying is, we need to keep working at it. I think SAPA gives us that forum. It forces us to come together. on more than a monthly basis. And I think we just have to keep putting that energy in. The transparency is important. Just like in a family, if you're holding something back, it doesn't work out, right? I mean, it causes tension and it doesn't work. So we have to be transparent. If there's issues, get them out on the table and not be afraid to talk about them.
Great. So let me have follow up with another question. And when we were planning for this, and Bob, I think you asked this question about generational projects, but can you all elaborate on potential opportunities for the watershed or even within your district moving forward that potentially we need to start thinking about and collaborating on? Does anyone have a thought? Bob?
Well, yeah, I could definitely chime in on Delta Conveyance and the Sites Reservoir. Both of those projects are generational projects. They're moving forward right now, and they will restore supplies, state water project supplies, that were lost due to environmental restrictions. So they're extremely important, and we need to get behind them. I don't know how many chances we'll have with these types of projects, and they are rolling forward. So those are two I would put out there.
Mike?
Yeah, I was going to say for us, it's probably trying to capture more stormwater behind Prado. We heard a couple different talks about this, panels about this, using FIRO to get more water stored behind the dam. Right now we can store at a certain elevation year-round. Of course, during the summer, it doesn't do us much good because there's no water behind the dam. It's empty. But during the winter, it can meet those elevations and exceed those elevations. So for us, it's getting a higher elevation for storage so that we can capture these what are becoming less frequent storm events. But that involves other issues, environmental issues that we have to deal with also. But it's extremely important for us to be able to capture that stormwater once it becomes available to us, because with climate change and all these other issues that are breathing down our necks, we're not going to see as many storms, and if we do, they're going to be, extremely heavy. And so we got to use that opportunity to be able to capture that water.
Craig?
Yeah, I think you heard Jennifer talk a lot about it. I think we're not doing our job as general managers if we don't really emphasize the importance of fixing the state system. Bob, I'm just going to repeat what Bob said, because if there's one thing I want everyone to leave with when they leave here is Southern California, Orange County, we are dependent, and what a huge role we play in the country's economy. And to think that we can't get our act together in Orange County to push a solution in the Delta. How do you replace those huge reservoirs capturing amazing quality of water that not only feeds agriculture, it feeds domestic uses, it feeds all the habitat uses we need in the state? It's the fix for everyone. How do we turn that away and not focus on that? Now, we're great at doing what we have to survive, and those are all really important projects, and they all will happen either way. But how do we not emphasize that big water that has to happen in the state? And I don't know what it takes to get us. You even heard that on the prior panel. Well, what does it take to do it? I don't know what it takes to do it. But I hate to think that we're apathetic as Southern California in fixing the Delta and making sure, whether it's raising Shasta that's been in the works for 20 years, it can't happen, right? Environmentally, it can't. Well, why not? And I think you talk to legislators from Northern California, they can tell you all about why the Delta is a bad idea. You talk to legislators in Southern California, I'm not sure they know where the Delta is sometimes. So we got to fix that problem. And I'm being a little facetious, but it is a priority for us, and I think we really got to start walking the talk.
Very good timing, Craig.
They waited for me to finish.
So we'll go ahead and close the panel, but in closing, I just want to mention one thing, because I appreciate all the comments about SAPA. I've only been there since February, and it's been great getting to know the agencies. And we work with agencies, a lot of agencies other than our member agencies, a lot of the cities like Riverside, and so that's a huge benefit. So one of the things that I've observed over these last 8 or 9 months is that while SOP has been very successful with its One Water, One Watershed program, right? And over the past 10 years, SAPA really put the region on the map of being a leader in this integrated regional water management. It seems like there's an inflection going on. There's a lot of money that's coming through the state for projects related to drought and climate resiliency. And what I'm seeing is I'm not sure we know how to do that effectively and efficiently. You know, there's a lot of new information out there, but I'm not sure our OWAL program fits in exactly with that. So from my point of view, if you have ideas, I've talked with folks around the watershed in terms of how we position the region, and we talk about it at SAPA in terms of planning for this funding. That's something that we want to spend a lot of time on and figure out for the watershed to optimize what funding we can take. So help me thank the panel for their contributions. And I want to acknowledge our sponsor, Bouter Engineering,